In Washington, the mood music says peace. But the path to a deal in Ukraine remains fraught with challenges. We are closer than ever to a settlement, with just two final knots to untie: the fate of Donbass and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Moscow warns against rushing to conclusions, demanding radical changes to the American draft proposal.
Kyiv will not trade land for empty promises. Our sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable.
Across the Atlantic, NATO foreign ministers reaffirm long-term support for Ukraine, urging allies to provide financial and military aid. As Berlin deploys Eurofighters to Poland, Warsaw scrambles jets nightly as Russian attacks edge closer to NATO's border. On paper, we are meters from the finish line. In reality, the sprint to peace could still become a marathon.
While diplomats talked escalation, the battlefield is shouting something else entirely. Just in the last 48 hours, Russia launched one of its biggest attacks of the year against Ukraine's power grid, railways, and ports. Air raid sirens screamed through the night, and Poland even had to scramble its jets. The diplomacy is whispering, but the artillery is roaring. But now, something has fundamentally changed on the front line. For most of this war, Russian air defenses have been pretty good at swatting down older Soviet-era jets and cheap drones. Well, now they're staring down the barrel of a fully loaded F-16, flying straight out of a NATO playbook. That's right, Ukraine has started flying the Viper in a true multi-role strike configuration. We're talking 8 GBU-39 Small Diameter Bombs under the wings, AIM-9 Sidewinders on the tips, AIM-120 AMRAAMs tucked in, and a jammer pod on the belly to mess with enemy radar. This isn't just a training flight, this is a serious strike package. We first got a clear look at this setup back in mid-February when a Ukrainian F-16 was spotted flying low, carrying those 8 glide bombs. It confirmed what we already suspected. Kyiv's Vipers have officially moved beyond just patrols to precision attacks. We're now seeing Western jets, Western weapons, and Western tactics all coming together. Game on. So let's break down why this specific loadout is such a big deal. The GBU-39 is a 250-pound bomb with GPS and wings that let it glide. When launched from an F-16 at speed and altitude, it can travel about 80 kilometers, not as far enough to hit a target, while the F-16 stays safely out of range of most Russian air defense systems. These bombs don't roar in like missiles. They coast silently. They have a tiny radar cross-section, making them incredibly hard to detect, and they are deadly accurate. Good luck trying to intercept something you can't even hear coming, because a single F-16 can carry 8 of them at once. One jet can launch a salvo at multiple targets simultaneously. Think ammunition depots, radar sites, electronic warfare systems, or those gun trucks Russia places around key locations. It's a classic NATO tactic. One jet creating many problems for the enemy. It's like ordering a sampler platter of headaches, and Russian air defenses have no choice but to try and swallow all of them. This changes the calculus of the air war. It forces Russia to spread its already stretched air defenses even thinner, trying to protect every possible target from these precise, stealthy attacks. The F-16 isn't just another plane, it's a new kind of threat that brings a whole new level of complexity to the fight. While everyone's eyes were on the F-16s getting ready to join the fight, Ukraine was busy pulling off a masterclass in behind-the-lines operations deep in Crimea. In a brilliant joint special op, their Navy hit the Saki Air Base area hard. They didn't just rattle some cages, they took out a critical Russian command node. And that's not all. They blew up a storage facility for Orion strike drones and dismantled a whole suite of air defense systems. We're talking Torem-2S, Panzer S-1 South, and even a Zu-232 anti-aircraft gun on a truck. Basically, they blinded the eyes, tied the hands, and clipped the claws of one of Russia's most important air hubs. This wasn't a fluke. Just days later, more videos surfaced, showing Ukrainian unmanned systems methodically hunting and destroying Russian surface-to-air missile systems across the entire front. Coordinated strikes took out Buk and Tor systems, racking up an estimated $60 million in damages. The pattern is clear. Take out the air defenses, and then the glide bombs can start their work. This is straight out of the modern warfare playbook. First, you cut the radar, blind the interceptors, and then you systematically pick apart everything those defenses were supposed to be protecting. What makes these new Stormbreaker glide bombs, or SDBs, so terrifying for defenders isn't just their range. It's their sheer unpredictability. Russian air defense crews have gotten used to tracking the slow, predictable flight paths of Shate-type drones. But imagine an F-16 launching 8 SDBs at once. Suddenly, a single Pantsir crew has to solve 8 different geometry problems simultaneously. Each bomb is on a slightly different glide path. Some are hidden by the terrain, and all of them are small, quiet, and have a low heat signature. The window to react shrinks dramatically, the system gets overwhelmed, and the chances of a successful interception plummet. This isn't just talk, it's physics. For months, Ukraine has been on the receiving end of Russia's own glide bomb assault. With thousands of FAB-1500s pounding their positions, GBU reported over 5,000 Russian glide bombs in October alone, and the count for this year has already surpassed 44,000. It's been brutal, but it's also forced Ukrainian planners to become experts in a new kind of warfare, the glide weapon duel. It's like counter-battery fire, but for the skies. The big difference now is that Ukraine can finally return the favor, but with superior precision and on a massive scale. Now, let's zoom out, because the picture gets even tougher for Moscow. In mid-November, Ukrainian long-range drones hit the Saratov oil refinery, damaging its primary processing unit. Taking one refinery offline is an economic headache. But a series of these strikes becomes a strategic nightmare. It starves the war machine of fuel, lubricants, and the logistics that keep an army on the move. The Saratov hit was just one part of a larger campaign targeting Russian seaports and terminals. Over on the Black Sea, Ukraine's sea drones continue to make headlines. They recently struck the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal near Novorossiysk, damaging a critical mooring point and temporarily halting oil exports. Even a brief slowdown at a terminal that handles over 1% of global oil sends a powerful message that the Kremlin hates to hear. The Black Sea is no longer a Russian lake. Every time their fleet has to hide, Ukraine's opportunities for long-range airstrikes improve. And just this week, GBU confirmed more drone strikes on the Timryuk seaport and the Syzran oil refinery. It's a constant reminder that Russia's vast territory is no longer a safe haven. With F-16s entering the equation, the list of potential targets grows exponentially. It's no longer just about what's vulnerable to a drone. It's about what's now reachable with a precision glide bomb. The game has changed, and Ukraine is ready to play. Command posts, radar farms, and high-value depots used to think distance was their best defense. Not anymore. The Tor M2 and Panzer S1 are the backbone of Russia's point defense network, the supposed umbrella over everything from ammo dumps to runways. But when these systems start disappearing, like they did around Saki, the effect cascades. Drone hangars turn into bonfires. Command centers are forced to relocate. The remaining launchers spend more time hiding than hunting. And once those local air defenses are worn down, F-16s can press closer or launch from safer angles, dramatically increasing the accuracy of their standoff weapons. Officials have made it clear, destroying Pantsers is a priority. By late October, almost half the inventory was claimed to be wrecked or crippled. Russia can push replacements to the front, but their crews are learning a hard lesson. Shoot and scoot is a drone skill too. This isn't about achieving superiority overnight. It's about steady erosion. You don't need to destroy every single anti-air system. You just need to knock out enough key nodes at the right time to open corridors for precision strikes. That's what the F-16 brings to the fight: timing, reach, and repeatability. Overnight into December 6th, Russia launched a massive wave of attacks. More than 650 drones and 51 missiles hammered 8 Ukrainian regions, targeting energy, rail, and port infrastructure. Ukraine and the IAEA even reported reduced output at nuclear plants as the grid struggled to absorb the shocks. In Kyiv Oblast, at least 3 people were injured. The attack was so intense that Poland scrambled its jets and trains were cancelled around Fastiv after a depot was hit. It was a maximalist message from Moscow, just as headlines about peace talks were beginning to surface. But Ukraine answered where it hurts most: logistics and depth. Within the same 48-hour window, Kyiv confirmed drone attacks on the Syzran refinery and the Temryuk seaport, extending a pattern of strikes from Saratov all the way to the Black Sea and in Crimea. Ukrainian military intelligence released footage showing a Russian MiG-29 destroyed on the ground. That's not just a plane on fire. It's intense psychological pressure on Russian aircrews, who thought the peninsula was a safe rear base. On the front lines, assessments from the ISW and the Ukrainian General Staff painted a grimly familiar picture. On December 6th, there were 97 combat engagements in a single day. Russian pressure continued east of Pokrovsk and toward Murmurad, but there was no decisive breakthrough. It's a war of trench lines, attritional surges, and the slow redrawing of fire sacks. Map overlays show marginal Russian gains around Murmurad, while Ukrainian sources described repelling multiple attacks near Kostia and Tenivka. Let's break down the latest from Ukraine. In simple terms, the front line bent, but it didn't break. While daily armored loss numbers can be a bit of a fog machine, we did get confirmation from Ukrainian reports on December 6th. Several Russian BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, some equipped with Cactus era, were destroyed by Ukrainian units in the Kursk sector and down south. Now, this isn't the kind of dramatic turret-tossing tank kill that goes viral on social media. But it's incredibly important. BMP-3 South are the workhorses of Russian mechanized assaults. Every burned-out chassis means one less armored taxi taking troops to the front line. So, the big picture is this. Russia launched a major push, NATO jets went on high alert, and Ukraine not only held its ground, but also struck back deep behind enemy lines. The pieces on the chessboard moved, and the clock is still ticking. Now, let's talk about that image of an F-16 loaded with 8 small diameter bombs, or SDBs. This is more than just a cool poster for military geeks. It represents a fundamental shift in doctrine crossing the border. Western strike packages are like a choreographed dance. Use decoys and jammers to confuse enemy radar, and send in glide munitions to peel back the defenses, followed by the main wave to destroy the actual target. Ukraine has been trying to replicate this with their adapted MiGs and Sukhoi, but the F-16 Viper makes this approach native. See that ALQ-131 pod in the photos? That tells you the mission isn't just about hope and prayer. It's about suppression and then striking. There's a very good reason Russia keeps moving its radar systems around Crimea and the land bridge. Every time a Tor M2 or a Pantsir S-1 air defense system is destroyed, it's not just a piece of metal gone, it's a hole in their defensive coverage. If you create enough of these gaps, the path for a silent, GPS-guided glide bomb starts to look less like a gamble and more like an open invitation. As more F-16s become operational, the entire equation changes. Ukraine can achieve the same results with fewer sorties, have more flexibility in choosing when to strike, and give their pilots a much better chance of surviving against a layered air defense network that's already being constantly harassed by drones. If you're re-wondering how a land war in eastern Ukraine connects to shipping terminals in the Black Sea and an oil refinery on the Volga River, the common thread is pressure. The recent strike on the CPC terminal near Novorossiysk, for example, choked Russia's oil export artery to a trickle before it was partially restored. Turkey even publicly warned both sides to keep energy infrastructure out of the fight, which is diplomatic code for "we're watching," and so are the insurance companies. In this environment, every Ukrainian success against the Black Sea Fleet or its shore-based support tightens the economic screws on Moscow. So why does this matter for an F-16 pilot? Because when Russia's maritime and energy infrastructure is under threat, it's forced to pull valuable air defense assets away from the front lines to protect ports, refineries, and bridges. When you stretch a defensive network thinner and thinner, the probability that a stealthy SDB will sneak through goes way up. This is what a 21st century air campaign looks like when you QANT pull off a full-scale shock and awe. Instead, you nibble and numb the enemy's defenses until their nerve endings just stop firing. And let's be clear, NATO isn't flying combat missions over Ukraine, but its fingerprints are all over the air picture. When Polish jets scramble, when Germany stations Eurofighters in Malberg, when the alliance recommits to long-term support, all of this sustains the ecosystem. Ukraine needs to keep its own jets in the air. We're talking fuel, spare parts, training pipelines, electronic warfare data, and of course, a steady supply of munitions. The alliance is the scaffolding, and the F-16 is the builder. Politically, NATO's Secretary General has been direct. There's no unanimous green light for fast-track Ukrainian membership just yet, but the commitment to arm, train, and sustain Ukraine is now official policy, not just charity. That's the real difference between headlines and hardware. You don't need a membership card to use the playbook. This creates a serious dilemma for Moscow. To stop these F-16s and their SDBs, they need dense, layered air defense coverage near every potential target. That means Tor systems for close-in defense, Panzer for the medium range, Buk for mid to high altitude, the big S-300 and S-400 systems for long-range threats. These assets are already playing whack-a-mole with Ukrainian drones, and Ukraine is actively hunting the hunters. They can rotate in fresh batteries, but every time they move, they expose themselves to surveillance and FPV drone stalkers. It's the paradox of protection. The more you put on the field to defend yourself, the more targets you give the enemy to hit. And that just adds one more point of pressure. Russia has normalized industrial-scale glide bombing against the front lines. It's been a costly tactic for them, but it has also conditioned Ukrainian air planners to this tempo. Now, with Ukraine's F-16s pushing their own glide bombs, Russian brigades that thought they owned the glide domain suddenly have to budget for intercepts from both sides. It's an air defense banker's nightmare. So what does this mean for tomorrow's map? Expect more of what we're seeing in Crimea. It's a recent series of precise strikes hitting radars, aircraft, surface-to-air missile systems, and even that Zu-23 truck serving as a close-in swatter, all signal a deliberate campaign to pick apart the peninsula's air defense grid piece by piece. As those gaps in coverage widen, watch for higher-value targets to get hit. Things like hardened command and control nodes, long-range radar heads, and aviation fuel farms. Each loss pushes Russian aviation further back from the front, buying Ukrainian brigades critical breathing space. Meanwhile, deep inside Russia, oil infrastructure remains a primary target. The downtime at the Saratov refinery showed that even a few explosions can ripple into weeks of complex repairs. The calculus for Kyiv is simple. Every barrel of oil not refined, every tanker not loaded is another day Russia has to pay more to fight the same war. And when a Black Sea terminal goes dark, even briefly, the world notices. Insurance companies notice. Global traders notice. That's a form of strategic leverage you just can't get from winning a single trench. On the front lines around places like Pokrovsk and Murmurad, we should expect more of the same ugly, grinding combat. Small advances, brutal counterattacks, and casualty-heavy seesaw battles where a blown-out BMP-3 or a smoldering TAT tank has unjust lost hardware at an infantry squad stranded and exposed. That's why striking the things that provide lift and protection, the armor that moves squads to contact, is so strategically smart. If you can bleed the assault formation, you slow the entire offensive, even if the line on the map barely shifts. So while Crimea will keep burning and the Black Sea will keep wobbling, the front will keep grinding. The difference now is that F-16s can turn local air defense gaps into precise, repeatable damage. We know for a fact that Ukraine's F-16s are not just flying air defense missions. They're configured for real strike packages, carrying Storm Shadow or Scalp-Cruise missiles, AIM-120 and AM-9 air-to-air missiles, and electronic countermeasures pods. We also know Ukraine is executing deep strikes from Crimea all the way to Saratov. We've all seen the aftermath at Sake Air Base, a command post down, drone hangars hit, a Torum-2, and a Pantsir-1 system destroyed, and that Zu-23 mounted on a Kamaz truck silenced. Of course, we also know Russia can still throw massive salvos, that NATO remains on high alert, and that the front line is elastic but unbroken. What we don't know, and shouldn't pretend to know, is the exact kill list for every single F-16 sortie. Ukraine guards that operational data incredibly tightly, and it's clear that some of the strikes we've seen in Crimea were executed by drones and special operations forces, not by jets. Where claims are unverified, we'll always say so. Where satellite imagery and reputable reporting align, we follow the evidence. That's how we keep one foot firmly in reality while telling a story that is constantly moving. This is the first time Ukraine has shown off the real thing. Western jets with Western weapons flown with Western tactics and backed by the kind of strategic pressure that turns pipelines, ports, and air bases into massive liabilities for Russia. For years, Russia fought an opponent with museum pieces and basically motorcycles with wings. Now it's facing a modern airframe built for this exact problem set, hurling glide bombs that whisper their way to the target rather than scream. while the diplomats keep making slow meters toward the finish line, and we'll all be thrilled if they break the tape. The strategic reality on the ground and in the air is changing day by day. On the ground and in the sky, the war is still a contest of who can break the other's shield faster. It looks like Ukraine just found a new sword that fits its grip perfectly. For Russia's air defenses, the big problem isn't just that a single F-16 can launch 8 accurate glide bombs at once. It's the 9th problem, and the 10th, and the 11th that follow. A wave of drones, another strike from an unexpected direction. Suddenly, everything is going wrong all at once. Politicians say the jets are almost there, but the battlefield says not yet. In that space between words and reality, an F-16 is already arcing high into the sky. 8 small diameter bombs quietly unfold their wings, beginning their long, silent glide, and somewhere deep behind enemy lines. A Russian air defense controller realizes with a jolt that his screens are all going dark, one by one. Ukraine's F-16s are unofficially in the fight. Russia's air defenses might be facing their biggest challenge yet. While the jets are getting ready, the talk of peace is heating up. The Kremlin is demanding territory that Kyiv will never surrender. In Brussels, NATO has just reiterated its unwavering support for Ukraine. Germany has moved its fighter jets to Poland, which raised its own alert level after a massive Russian missile strike on December 6th. In response, Ukraine struck back hard, hitting targets in Temryok and Syzran, and even released photos of a burned-out MiG-29 in Crimea. On the front lines, the map around Novorodivka has twitched and changed, but the lines haven't broken. And right now, somewhere on a frozen, wind-swept airbase, a Ukrainian ground crew chief is tightening the last bolt on a quadruple bomb rack. Why? Because the weather forecast for tomorrow looks perfect for gliding. In this war, words and headlines travel faster than artillery shells, but the only argument that truly matters is the one made with steel and fire. With these new jets, Ukraine has just delivered its opening statement. The courtroom is the sky over Ukraine. The jury is Russia's entire air defense network. And the verdict is already starting to glide in. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis interesting, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.